I was raised between Canada and the UK. I have Saudi parents. I was born in Iraq. I moved over to Canada in around 1985, where my dad and my mom were studying medicine. During that period, I was always get the question asked of what do you want to be when you grow up? And you know, you're too small to figure out what you want to be. And I used to remember saying I want to be a police officer, which never happened. And at the end, I remember when I became 9, and when my dad used to ask me, what do you want to be? I used to say, I want to be a millionaire. I think that was a sort of a job that was listed in my head. Being a millionaire is a job. When I was between the UK and Canada, we eventually headed back to the kingdom where my dad secured a job in one of the hospitals. And I always wanted to go back to the UK and complete my high school. And my father said, if you want to go and live in the UK alone, you're going to have to live how the British live. And I said, what does that mean? He says, well, I'll give you your ticket and that's it. And good luck. And so I took on that challenge and I said, fine. I went, when I was in grade 11, I went to a small town called Watford in the UK. And I entered into the King Fahd Academy at the time, and I graduated from the academy and entered into college where I did a multimedia design and journalism. And now, when I asked my dad, I called him and I told him, you know, the fees for this is a bit high. And he says, yeah, well, it's not my problem. You want to live in the UK? Live like the British. And he said, figure it out. And I really didn't want to give up on that dream that, you know, I wanted to be independent and live on my own. And I actually ended up working 5 days a week and studying 2 days a week to afford to pay for the tuition that I had. It was very challenging. It was not easy. I used to flip burgers. I used to mow lawns. I used to paint houses. And you know, it was just a mix of everything. I think my first job was at Burger King, and I still remember it. It gave me a lot of ambition to continue doing what I was doing. After I finished the college, you know, I finished multimedia design and journalism. My family went back to Canada, and I thought to myself I should go there and see what's going on. At least I could live with them a bit. I went over to Canada. I wanted to continue studying in graphic design. I really liked Toy Story, the movie at that time. I wanted to do something around that area. And I couldn't find the university that had that program. And I eventually started looking at what courses I could take at university. And my family, within our culture, so I have Iraqi grandparents from my mother's side and Saudi grandparents from my father's side, and they all, I don't know how it is here in Bahrain, but if you are not a doctor and you're not an engineer, you're an idiot. So my family had so much pressure on me to get into the field of medicine, and I just couldn't do it. I just don't like the sight of blood. I don't like the sight of different things. It just didn't work. And I have ADHD, so you see me all over the place. I can't focus, and there's a lot of jargon that I have to memorize in medical terms. So what I ended up doing is I entered to do my bachelor in commerce. I did a major in marketing, a major in HR, and a minor in psychology. And I really thought that, you know, I just wanted to do something more than the usual because I wanted to prove my family that, you know, I can still make it and not just graduate in medicine. After I graduated and finished with it, my family asked me, what are you going to do now? And I said, I don't know, I need a job. And they said, well, you have to go find yourself one. We're not going to help you with that as well. And I ended up going to the kingdom, coming back to Saudi alone. And they stayed in Canada. And at that time, I remember that I had a very hard time finding a job. I was qualified, but I just didn't know how to search for a job. And unfortunately, in Saudi, if you don't know people, you're not able to get an opportunity or a job that you want. And I eventually had to refer, and probably Stephen doesn't know this, but I had to refer to my aunt who knew somebody who knew someone that worked at KPMG. And my CV went around, and eventually I was called in for an interview, and I got the job. It was a really interesting and ambitious job, which, was a department that was just starting out at the time. I started my career and I worked there for 6 years in total. But always during this time, I wanted to understand if there's a purpose for what I'm doing. Is it just about making money and referring back to my childhood? I always read about people. You read about the Steve Jobs and you read about the Bill Gates. What makes them different from who I am and who they are? What is it that made them different? And I realized that it's all about taking risk and venturing into something that you believe in. And during the time at KPMG, I looked at things from a social level. I wanted to do stuff that has a social impact on the community. Anything that is valuable to the community and has a sort of a way to measure what sort of value you put into your community and your society. And I looked around me and started thinking, what is the things that I can do in the kingdom to help those around me? And I looked at my sister, and my sister was someone that graduated from Canada with a master's degree, and she was a much smarter individual than I am. She came back, and I remember when she first entered into the kingdom, she said to me, or I told her, "You're not going to find the job. Let me help you find your job. I have a position available for you." And what she responded to me, I still remember it. She said, "Khalid, I have more pride and more dignity than you have to allow someone to find me my job for me. I'll go and find it myself. I have a degree. I should be able to find a job." And so, fortunately, she started looking for a job for 7 months. She used to use the driver because she cannot drive. And she would take him, and she'd have a bulk of CVs with her. She'd drive around these entities and corporations, and she'd drop her CV off. And because she's not allowed in these buildings, she's not allowed to, her CV doesn't get to the HR or the recruitment department. So it would sit at the security desk, and the security desk would take her CV and just throw it in the garbage. So she gave up, and she went back to Canada, hoping that something might happen. At that time, I looked at that, and I was at KPMG, which is a very distinguished firm that has a lot of consulting services. And I just wanted to understand, if it is difficult for me as a man to find an opportunity, how must it be for a woman in Saudi Arabia? So I looked at, or I started researching studies, trying to understand the labor statistics, how many people are unemployed, how many people are not working. And at that time, I think it was around 2010, there was no stats whatsoever about the kingdom's unemployment. There was one study that was done in 2008, and I remember it very well, because the study was on unemployment of women. It said that 60% of women with PhDs are unemployed. And I remember the study well because the Ministry of Labor at that time asked the consulting firm to apologize for releasing the statistic. And so I took this stat and I used it as my story. And I had a little focus group, and focus group in Saudi means gathering people for shisha. And so we had a number of HR heads. I wanted to understand why aren't they hiring women, or what's stopping them from hiring women. And they all said, the only reason we're not hiring women is we do not know how to find females. It's not because we don't believe in their talents or skills. We just don't know how to find them. And so I said, okay, so there's a gap eventually. That means job seekers can't find the employers. Employers can't find job seekers. Let's create an online site for women to find the employers and employers to find women. It's easy. It's something that's done globally. Why not do it here? We started with a basic website. And we found a lot of employers. We found, you had GE, Microsoft, Oracle, all these large entities start signing up, posting jobs specifically for women. And it was great. We had a great response. One of the things that we said is, instead of just being, a connector, why not go out and create jobs? So the next thing I did is I started looking at companies that never hired women and start convincing them in hiring women and us finding them the talent to be recruited there. And so we went out to a number of entities. We convinced a lot. One of them was this supermarket chain in Saudi. And this is back in 2011. And when we went to the supermarket chain, I had a discussion with the HR head. He said, well, you know, we want to hire women, but what positions should we hire them for? I said, you can hire them anything. Accountants, admin, finance. Even you can hire them as cashiers in your supermarket if you want. And they said, well, if you can find us women to work in these positions, we're more than happy to take them on. Within 5 days, we found them 7 employees, female employees. And then within 3 days, they had to fire them. And that was because the public were not happy that this is the first time women worked in a public space outside of hospitals. It was the first time we found females working in a public space in Saudi Arabia. And so people weren't happy with it. We got a lot of threats, you know, I got some very bad emails and phone calls. And I was considering if I should continue or shut this down. At the same time, I was balancing my job that I had with KPMG. And so I remember I was sitting down with the chairman and I said, look, this is something I really believe in and I want to leave the organization and I want to be focusing on it. I was a sort of a C-level position at the age of 28 at KPMG. It's not easy to be in that position and leave something that's so stable and to go on to something like women employment in Saudi. But I really believed in it. And the chairman and the firm were very nice with me and they said, we'll give you a year. Go see how it works out. If it happens, it happens. If not, you have a job that you can come back to. And throughout this year, I worked on not marketing to women, but marketing to men. And trying to get them to understand the value and the economics of how much of the income that comes into the household is able to allow the families to grow. So you see in the kingdom, I looked at another subject, which is the housing. We have a housing problem. We only have 28% of Saudis own their own homes. And I think that's because of a limited income into the household. It's just coming in here and it's going out that way. And so once this lady starts working, no matter what sort of income that comes in, we're able to start making some money and building a house together and building a family together. And we started with this concept called the virtual offices. We thought maybe this is the best way to approach things. And to enable women to work virtually. So 50% of those that are unemployed are in remote areas or in rural areas where there aren't job opportunities, not for men or females. So the virtual offices allows you as an entity to have a computer in your office and you're able to see every lady what she's doing. So you see how many, if she's working as a call center, you see the number of inbound, you see the number of outbound calls, you listen into the phone calls, you can see how much time she's spending on Facebook and on Twitter, you can see the emails sending out, and it's a really effective monitoring tool that allows job creation in these rural areas. And so when we came up with this solution, the public, everybody loved it. They said, yes, this is the solution for Saudi Arabia. Have women work at home. It was not my vision for it. It was a vision of how to integrate women into the working society initially and having people accept females who work. So in a year's time, her male counterpart will say, yes, this income is important. I want you to go out and start working into the workplace. Now, we were lucky when I started Glo Work because the timing was right. It came with a lot of reforms that the king in the kingdom had. There was the reforms on the retail industry. So in the retail industry, you know, you go out buy cosmetics or your makeup, you go buy from a male or from a man. That doesn't really make sense. And so the first thing that we did is actually focus on converting this retail industry to a women-only industry, where a law in 2012 was passed that every single retail store has to have 100% Saudi women working in the front office. And that by itself created 400,000 jobs for women in the next 5 years. We've been working extensively with the government now on placing women into those positions. So you have the cosmetic stores, you have the abaya stores, the accessory stores, you have the lingerie shops. In the next 3 to 6 months, all the handbag stores, the shoe stores, and the tailor shops, all will have 100% Saudi women working in those stores. Now, along with that, you see a lot of other challenges from education and the labor market. You see that women graduate, they don't know what's Procter & Gamble, what's a Unilever, what opportunities are out there when I graduate. In Saudi Arabia, 80% of those that graduate want to become a teacher. It's a very noble position, but I ask them, why do you want to graduate and become a teacher? And the reasons being is the only person that they see throughout the 4 years of their education is their teacher. So that's the source of inspiration that they have, and I want to be like them. So I commend what you're doing here and having different people come and talk to you, because it's very important to understand what's out there. It's not limiting you between these walls and your books and what you're graduating with. Glo Work now is an entity. We have over 1.9 million women in our database in Saudi Arabia. We hire or help around 6 women a day to be placed in different jobs. We've created the first public career fair 2 years ago for women. It was a career fair that brings together employers that want to hire women only. Last year, for instance, we had 91 companies participate just to hire women, and we had over 17,000 attendees attend. Now, at that event, it was the first of its kind. I actually got pulled over by the security police, or istikhbarat, and they put me in a room and they started asking me. It's like the CIA of Saudi. They asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's a career fair. We're hosting a career." They thought I was holding a protest. Because what would happen is they would leave the event and the venue, they would be holding these pink bags, and they'd be standing on the street waiting for the driver to pick them up. So you'd find hundreds of women on the street just standing in pink bags, and they thought it was a protest that was running. So it was really an interesting, it's been a social experiment for myself. It's been a social experiment for everybody in the kingdom. Saudi now has laws that we've been working with the kingdom on. For instance, if you have 50 employees, female employees, you must have a nursery in your organization. This is a new law that was passed recently. There is now subsidies that is going out on childcare and transportation that will be given out to all female employees. There is now breastfeeding 2 hours in the workplace has been given to all those newly mothers. So there's been a lot of laws. Unfortunately, the negative side has been captured on the kingdom. It's always the negative stories and negative impact. And this is one of the reasons I chose to go this path, because we want to showcase that not just in Saudi, but in the Arab world, we have some really good stories that come out from really good people, and there's a lot of people trying to come out with nice initiatives and nice things for their country, because they love what they do, and they love their country, and they want to give back to their country. I certainly, I came back to the kingdom for one reason, is because when I went and did my bachelor's degree, I was funded, and I remember how hard it was when I was in the UK, paying and scraping dishes and flipping burgers to pay my education. And when I went to Canada and I got a scholarship from the government, it saved me a lot of hassle, and I was so grateful for it that I want to give back to the community. And some things that I've learned over the course of the years, aside from just, you have to take risks to stand out, I would really suggest, not to limit yourself. Be very ambitious. The thing that I put in mind, I said, when I'm 30, I want to be a millionaire. I've always said this, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to that place. I want to have my own business, and I want to be doing this and that. Now I've achieved that, and I've just passed 30. I'm trying to think of what I want to be doing when I'm 40. So you really need to be ambitious. You need to really think of writing history, not just looking and reading your books. Why not be the ones that write those books? Why not be the people that people look up to instead? You all have the key to something, and you all are talented in one way or another, and you should use that talent, just you need to find it. One of the other things that I've learned is that there's so many obstacles in your community, in your work, in your education, look at those obstacles as opportunities. Don't look at them as challenges and things that you'd fail from. The obstacles, if you turn them into opportunities, you'll see that this is what creates a true entrepreneur, a true social leader, an innovator, and someone that people look up to. What we're doing right now, the next phase for Glo Work is we're establishing Glo Fit, which is the first female fitness centers licensed in Saudi Arabia. We're launching Glo Car, which is a sort of transportation model which allows women to utilize, similar to the Uber concept globally, but that's we'll even have one here in Bahrain, inshallah. And we're continuing to grow and diversify our work. We have a great brand reputation that's built. We have now 90% of our workforce are women. 70 employees we have, and around 63, I think, 63 employees are all females, and all Saudi females working. They're the ones who built this brand, they're the ones who built this reputation, and they're the ones that are working now while I'm talking here. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for this great opportunity. I really am proud that you guys have such an initiative to welcome people and speak to students and faculty members, and I think that it's key to understand the value of this. Maybe you won't understand it now, but when you graduate and you go off to different places, you'll understand that when you have these people come and talk to you, you have a source of inspiration. I wish I had this when I was in university or in college. So thank you very much.